Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So I just posted a video entitled "Pockets of Future Community," and I really probably shouldn't have posted that one with the energy that I had. I think I had low energy when I made it. I didn't re-listen to it, but I want to clarify a few things. I had a couple of emails. One guy wrote to me, and it sounds like somebody who might be a good fit for the situation, at least one of the situations. But I wanted just to clarify everything here. And I don't know, I haven't read the comments yet. My wife and I were traveling. I'm kind of wiped out. Today's Monday, July 14th. I feel pretty good now in terms of I was wondering whether I should wait till tomorrow morning. But I wanted to give some sort of background and understanding from my perspective and, I don't want to be too specific, but specific enough. But anyways, here's the situation. So my first marriage, which was a disaster, and I've talked about it in depth on the Journey series and other places. And, we wanted to do an intergenerational family farm. My ex was good at some things and was a good researcher and was smart and had some skills, but, ultimately was so damaged by whatever past some scars and family abuse and her victim consciousness and mental issues, family mental issues and all those things, and self-abuse and suicidal tendencies and self-sabotage. It just was never going to come to fruition. And I'm limited. Like, I'm not great. Like, so, it's not like I can be successful, but under the right circumstances, I achieve goals and these things. But given the circumstances, it just wasn't meant to be. And when we were homesteading, which we did somewhat successfully at first, and then things sort of fell apart as my ex's issues got worse and things just, whatever. I don't need to go into those details. But a couple of things. There was an idea of an intergenerational family farm, which my kids would grow up and we would have a piece of land and they would buy houses on that land or build houses on that land. And we would be a family support system like the old days, and everyone would help each other. And it was a good idea, but my kids don't get along now, and I'm not speaking to two of my kids, and I have a pretty good relationship, but not a deep relationship with my youngest son, who's doing well. He's got a job now, and he's making money. He's getting ready to move out, and let's just we have a cordial relationship, but we're not headed in the same direction. And of course, my daughter died from suicide. So the four kids, the intergenerational family farm, all that stuff fell apart. The other thing, when my kids were homeschooling, we found this this idea from India called the Gurukulam, and it was like a school, like in the middle of an ashram or in a village. There's a meditation hall there, for the adults, and where also kids could, learn about spiritual things. And there'd be, outdoor activities where kids would learn to milk cows and plant vegetables and do farming. But also they would do all this type of, with like they get a good solid education, academic education, but arts and music and, outdoors, a different type of learning style. A lot of stuff would be, there'd be classes outdoors and study of nature. And, there'd be not just stuck in these prison-like schools, but and there'd be, people who would live around the schools, families, like this sort of thing, around the school area, and there would be like a community there, right? And, it's a beautiful idea, and there are some places like that in India, and there used to be places like that when India was at its height in terms of their culture. And, my family and I, we had brought all this, we had done a lot of homeschooling stuff. We had innovative things, and we had written a children's book, my ex and I, and we had things to offer. And of course, the homesteading and the truther stuff, and we had dove into the whispers of the brighter world. So we have all this stuff to offer that we thought we would bring back to the organization. Of course, I didn't know that Kamlesh Patel, the current master of the system and Master Chargy's successor, was going to be a piece of shit, and some of the other things. And we had received a lot of criticism for doing what we were doing, for actually believing in the teachings of the system and making decisions based in those teachings. And, a lot of people said they believed in the teachings, but they didn't want to change their lifestyle and prepare for things that were predicted or whatever it was, right? I mean, we weren't going crazy with our hair on fire, but we were adjusting ourselves and preparing our kids for the world the way it was going to be according to the system, according to literature and things that the masters had said in the system. And again, the masters of the system wasn't say people should quit their jobs and go live in the woods, but there was some sense that maybe this information would be helpful and people could start adjusting themselves to what was going to happen in the future. And in that, there was this stuff with homeschooling and farming and this idea of a gurukulam. And I went to meet with Kamlesh, who it was a horrible meeting. He was a piece of shit anyway, and I didn't know that then. I mean, he was better then, but still the meeting went horrible. And I just wanted an up and down answer to see if there was going to be some sort of community. Because when you live on a homestead and you are now working to be more self-sufficient, growing your own food and things, you need a village-based community. Like that's what people had before. You need a tribe, you need extended family, and you need, elderly people and youthful people and people in the middle and all these things, right? You need people with different skill sets and people coming together. That's how tribes work. That's how villages work. That's how human beings had lived for thousands of years, but now that's been erased from our, knowledge base and things like this. And, I'm not a community person. I don't get along with people well. I don't work with other people well. I mean, in the right circumstance, I can, but, I'm not a community organizer. And certainly my ex had her issues, and there was no community there. Right before I left India to come back to America, these two people approached me, well-dressed, thoughtful, evolved people. And they said they heard about all the stuff that we had to offer, and they were doing some sort of schooling thing. I don't know if it had to do with that Brighter Minds thing, so it might be, maybe, I don't think so. But I was just tapped out. Like I didn't have anything left to offer, right? So I came back to America with my family, and there was always this idea that maybe a farm would be something I would do in the future. But, after getting my ass kicked by the first situation, I just wasn't up for it, and all the stuff I went through in India and the divorce and all these things, and I was just, wiped out. And I had to reinvent my life and to some extent my kids' lives, and they were going to live more normal lives, and, the failure of the intergenerational family farm. And so I met my wife she contacted me through this YouTube channel, and we had a lot in common, and, we get along really great. We have a, really great relationship, and she was, doing some gardening and farming and was interested in doing that. We had originally talked about some of these things and things that she could do that I, knowledge that I had. And she immediately wanted to farm when we got together, and I was a little bit not into it because I was so worn out, but we had more resources. Of course, we got, a tractor and things that made it easier. And, doing it, I guess this would be my, I built 4 or 5 homesteads now. And so I've gotten better at it, and I have sort of a vision of it. And my wife has skills, and she's a real hard worker and just a very effective and competent person. Person that, is able to do quality work. But we're both older, and if the economy is going to collapse or things are going to change, and, we have the opportunity to grow a lot of food, but, we would need people to work the farm with us, right? But again, for us, we need people with skills. I mean, the number one thing is people who aren't going to be dramatic and bring drama. People are going to be grateful, and look at this as an opportunity, and look to contribute and be selfless. People who are going to be, able to support themselves financially, and just all the things that, basically just really good neighbors, right? We need people, and that maybe we do some definitely do some shared work together. We have already fruit trees in the ground, and we'll be getting cattle again, and the possibility of milking cows and doing these things, and there'd be a community of shared, farming resources and things, and people contributing, especially younger people have more energy and whatever it might be, right? So those are there's a couple of opportunities. One, there's kind of a beat up old house that needs some work, and opportunity for people to come and live there and also contribute to the farm. That would be like a neighboring situation. And we have some neighbors, some people who may or may not be getting older, In fact, I've lived in two neighborhoods where there was like an intergenerational family farm. And this place is like a farm area that used to be intergenerational farm, and the family is aging out, and there aren't really grandkids, and they're selling off their places. And we have really good neighbors who are Christians who really take pride in being good neighbors. They don't really know about, I mean, I haven't talked very much about myself or whatever, but they're really, they're people with stuff to offer. But the father of the family, the dad is ex-military, and he has some back issues. And we were talking to him, and there's a possibility they might sell their farm. And there's some other places around our house where farms would become available for people who have the money to do it, the ability to move, people who can work at home. It's not something where we would, we don't want people to make rash decisions and quit their jobs and sell their homes and not have a way to support themselves. And, that's not like the Sahaj Marg way. There's used to be an ashram in Molina, Georgia. And it was a very nice place in terms of the buildings, and it wasn't developed. It was kind of built on the cheap. And compared to some of the ashrams in India and one of the ashrams in Europe, it was not a great place, but the energy there was fucking amazing. And we used to go to gatherings there. Sometimes the birthday gatherings, sometimes Master Charji would come once a year. And the energy, I just loved the place. It was like my favorite place. And everyone who went there wanted to move there. Like everyone who went there was into the system. They would so much be digging the energy and how great it felt to be there. And Charji said, yeah, you can move here, but you have to get a job here first. You can't just come down and move here and expect it to work out. And, it was a couple hours away from Atlanta. It's in a rural town that wasn't all that psyched about having some Hindu or Indian meditation or some hippie thing. Right? Like, they weren't any issues, but, the people weren't all that happy about it. And, it was like so far away from Atlanta, and it was hard for people to find work. And people moved down there and had a really hard time. They were often lonely and not connecting, and, it wasn't the same when it wasn't a gathering going on. And so, people make rash decisions that are not always in their best interest. And, there's crazy people do shit like that too, which is something I desperately would want to avoid, right? People who have emotional issues on psychological medication, people with alcohol and drug issues, like that stuff that I don't want any part of, right? I'm just too old I can't carry anybody, and I'm not going to prop people up emotionally, financially, physically. I mean, I'm just not, this is not what I'm willing to do or wanting to do. I'm about doing as much as I can right now. So this would be something where, the things would have to be mutually beneficial, and, people who want to build some sort of farming community that have skills to offer and something to offer, and, the right attitude. And the most important thing is it's just like something that's destined to happen. There has to be it's not some wishful thinking thing or some pie in the sky thing, where, like it's something that it's supposed to be. Like there's this thing that opened up, and that's why I'm talking about this here. And things just kind of fell into place, and I'm like, oh, this was meant to be. My wife and I, just a lot of things about, where we're living and what we're doing. It's not a coincidence. Like it's just happening because it's supposed to happen. It's just like there's things that are just supposed to happen. People that are supposed to connect, and, places you're supposed to live and move to. And, and I mean, this would be a kind of a way where if there was enough people living in a small community of neighbors, that there would be the possibility for these spiritual gatherings and the meditation, and, where we could sort of recreate what I had at the ashram in Georgia. There's the special kind of quality to the land at our farm. It's kind of like a natural ashram already in some ways. And so there's this, possibility. But I'm not forcing anything. I'm not going to leverage myself and try to make something happen that's not supposed to. There's people who want to do gatherings and, contacted me. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be great, but I'm not carrying the gathering. Like, I used to, in terms of I said this to my wife. We were, driving home and we were traveling. And I said, I used to make coffee. Like I used to get up early and make the coffee at the gatherings. And sometimes I'd do security and I'd help out with maintenance things. But I didn't, order food. I didn't do the whatever, the administration, the networking, the accommodations, getting people set up in dorm rooms and things, or helping people, coordinate their travel, all the things that need to be done, right? All the communication that needs to be done, all the people had to register. There's all these things, all these jobs. And certainly the most important job was Master Chargy's job of doing the spiritual work and setting up the spiritual conditions for everything to happen. And, I'd be taking on that part, certainly not as a master, which would be whatever that is. So, these gatherings I wanted to see happen, but not, to the extent that I'm going to be bitter or angry or just, resentful or just, put in a position of failure because I'm having to do a lot of things that I'm just not capable of doing. It would take a community of people who are devoted and into those things. And, if there are enough people living in a certain area and the, gatherings started off small and people got into it and it just progressed naturally, well, that would be great. But otherwise, it's just not meant to happen. And so the same thing for all these things. If some people are supposed to connect and, there's this possibility of a pocket of the future, I'm open to it, but I'm not going to make something happen or, try to do something and build a community that just isn't destined to be, right? And so, for those people who feel like this is something that they think is their destiny, and not some crazy fuck, right? And it's hard to say that because crazy fucks don't know they're crazy, crazy fucks, right? And I'm not saying this in any way where I'm trying to be cruel or mean. I just don't have it in me, After all the things I've, my family stuff and all the things I've endured, and my wife too, she has to. It's both of our lives, and we need things that are, no drama, and people who would be grateful for this opportunity, and and it would be a right fit for them. And the other thing is, my email is pocketsofthefuture@gmail.com. It's always something like that, right? You'll have an email associated with your YouTube channel, and it's not for any other things. Like, I have ways that people can contact me. You can be friends with me on Facebook and message me there, or an Instagram. Those are the ways to contact me. The email is just not great for me. It's just, it's not something I don't check as much, and whatever. This is not some pen pal like thing. Just this is for people who are inquiring about this this situation, and feel like they have some connection there. But anyways, so there's that. And I just I'll have to do some follow-up videos. I'm a little bit tired, but I think I did this one pretty well, in terms of expressing the available opportunities. There's kind of a beat-up old house that's available now, and maybe some nicer houses that would be somewhat expensive and would come with some farmland for people who had the ability to do that, and also had the ability to move, and are And again, if this was something was like the inner call, like they were being called to this, right? Hopefully people would have some connection to they would almost have to have some connection to the spiritual aspect of the system, the Sahaj Marg Gratefullness meditation that we do. Someone is an abhyasi, a spiritual seeker that's ready to, like unfold. So anyways, I'll do some more updates on this over time, and I'll just put these videos up. I'll put this video up on multiple channels. And I think it's, I think this is good for now. Okay, greetings, or whatever it is. Tuesday, July 15th. Just recovering from traveling a little bit. Things are harder for me as I get older. And I had some more things to add to this voiceover. I was really restless last night, which may or may not have anything to do with this subject here. But like really restless. Sometimes this happens to me where I'm just, crawling out of my skin and just like difficulty sleeping, just whatever. And then it happens a lot if I don't eat something before going to bed. Maybe I'm detoxing. I'm taking this ivermectin now. I'm not going to recommend anything, but so I think it's having a positive effect, very subtle if it is, but it hasn't had a negative effect. Unless the restlessness had to do with that. I'm not taking it before bed, so. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. But I am definitely a little stressed out by this whole idea. In part because of the way that Sahaj Marg went. and in part by the kind of personality configuration that I have, and in part because of people. People are, you know, um, people, and that's not, I mean, this is just what we see now happening in America. People aren't trained for a community, and people have psychological issues and all the rest of the things, spiritual issues and those things. So it's, there's going to be a need if their system goes down. I mean, you have people in your life now, you just don't need to have community. Like, you have people doing things for you. You have people in foreign countries making your stuff. You have, the whole way that the economy works. And you can live in relative isolation. And, but it's been my experience that more people just usually make things worse. It escalates the drama and these things. So there's that aspect of it. But people are going to have neighbors. They're going to have family and community in a situation where this system no longer functions 100%, or maybe not at all, depending on what percentage it breaks down, where you just have, you have a local, everything becomes local again and not national, and, whatever. And even, you kind of need it anyway. I mean, people go to, old people go to retirement, go to retirement homes or whatever they call them. Old people who are no longer have a family to take care of them as they get old, these things, right? And so there's all of that kind of stuff. And there are things that have happened in my life where just, like, whether it's a move or, a new relationship or the end of the marriage or the end of my family or whatever it might be. And, it just starts moving, and then, things start changing, and you have to adapt to the changes. And it's always a little bit exciting, something new, right? It's always, there's always some energy in it, and then there's the divine aspect of it, and it's the, thing that's supposed to happen, and then, then there's the changes you have to make, right? The adaptation to the new situation. And, that has to come with gratitude more than anything else, which I've talked about. My wife just texted me, and we got bad news about the situation that I was talking about. The house is, like, really totaled, not a worth saving kind of thing. I mean, it's in bad shape. So that throws sort of a wrench into the whole thing. Like, there's already some hassles with the thing, and which, there inevitably would be. But anyways, there's a couple of things here. Like, there's just things that need to happen, whether you want it to happen or not. Like, that's just, reality, right? That's just how things work out. Just something needs to happen, and we all have to adapt to it. There's changes afoot in our world, and so, there's all that. I got one comment I wanted to read about, and here's the comment here. You are a father and a husband. You're a leader. You may not want to lead in a community setting, but you are more than capable of it. I say it because it's for you, at least, will be a genuine person in a community as a leader, a village elder. Being honest with the community is the first step. Well, I'm going to set parameters and whatever because of just, then this person says, this is it here. It's a very high probability that your homestead community will happen, but it will not be in a manner you might think. It might be something that's thrust upon you. You'll teach a lot of people to survive. I feel. Good luck, Paul. I'm not a leader per se, like people who have leadership potential. Being a leader, and, none of these things matter to me, like as a, like an ego thing. Like, people want to be leaders, they get bummed out when they're not. There is this group therapy dynamics. A group ends up having a leader, then somebody who wanted to be a leader but isn't a leader, so they're always pissed off and they're like sabotaging the group. Like, there's these different personality types and things that we studied in group therapy and group dynamics and all these types of things. Like, I'm a visionary, and but I'm also a fringe person. I'm always on the outside, making fun of the thing or whatever it is that, sitting in the back of the class and, and not having any sort of sense of, and not being in the center of the group or these kind of things, right? Which is what a leader has to be, like a person who's, into whatever needs to happen. And, my wife has certain capabilities and characteristics, and she's more social, and there's those things, and then other people in the group. And so, I'm not really liking group type of activities. I never really loved the group meditations on Sunday as much as I did the individual sittings in my personal practice, although the energy is better when there's more people. And certainly the gatherings at the Sahaj Marg system were out of this world, and they were, really, they were the sort of the big things that happen in terms of transformation and, the energies that's there. What I've learned over the years and with my limitations that we all have, and I have probably, some more than other people, given the circumstances, is that I have to rely on God, which has been positive. Because, I don't have the personality configuration for something or whatever it is, right? So, in their various jobs and various things, in any kind of situation, I'm often thinking about, using constant remembrance and noticing the difference when I do that. Constant remembrance is a Sahaj Marg trademark, sort of practice of having the idea that God is there doing the work and you're not, or you're there, like, God's allowing you to participate in whatever activity you're doing, and that God has to come through you for the work to do what it's got to do. And then even more so in a group situation. But in the past, whatever happens, there's certain ways things can go. There's pathways, and you can see, there's the door opens for something, and then either it unfolds or it doesn't. That's just how life works. The opportunities are there. And, and I'm kind of good at recognizing, okay, this is something that you have to pursue, but the outcome is not always what you envisioned. It's, something middle of the road, whatever it is. It's just it's there's the way that you would hope it would be, the dream that you have. And then there's the, what you really, there's a difference between what you want and what you need and all the rest of it, right? And so, one of the things Chargy said, expect not and thou shalt not be disappointed, like a lack of expectations, and you go in and, you're trying to, or you're working towards being able to just adapt yourself to God's will, whatever's going to be the end part of it. But I know just, I can say one thing I'm kind of aware of is as I enter my later years, I'm 60, and so this is, so many years, and basically a lot of it is here. I'm getting texts about the, opportunity thing, the house that's there, and it's just bad news. My wife is relaying information that's being gathered about what would have to happen to make it so it's a whole thing. But anyways, as I enter my older years, you know what they call the golden years. You just don't have as much energy for all the other bullshit and all the other things that you've had to endure in your life. And if you have pushed all your stuff back, your pain stuff, you've built up your bank of pain. This is something that comes straight from Chargy. Then you have to experience it at the end of your life. It's better to suffer the things you have to suffer and go through some scars and the cleaning and stuff when you're younger, because you don't have the energy when you're older to do it. And then you're just in the kind of a mindset where you're preparing to, in a normal situation, you'd be preparing your family and your kids to take over whatever needs to be done, and them to take whatever resources you have left and do something with them, right? So that's that's the obviously the normal situation, but that's not what I have, and we have in our lives here. And then of course the collapse of civilization, I have to get into the Trump thing here, so I'm not going to go on too long with this voiceover. But I can say that from my family situation and all the things that I've endured, and then the stuff that's gone on with Heartfulness and Dodgy, and then all these other things, and just everything that's going on in the world and political parties, all the drama, all the bullshit, and how fucked up people are. Like, I just can't, I mean, I can't. I don't have anything left for any of that stuff, right? So, God can only ask of you what you can do, and so that's kind of my mindset for this thing. It has to be very low maintenance people, and it's not me. I'm not training anybody. I'm not carrying anybody. I'm not any of these things. That has to be understood. Like, it's just, if I see red flags or whatever it is that, I mean, that I'm going to have to deal with. And, like right now, there's the situation has gotten more difficult, that just where my wife and I are finding out about what needs to be done to make something, I mean, it's just not what we expected. So, so it begins. But anyways, those are the things I wanted to add here. I guess in terms of the, what I said in the last voiceover, the most important piece is that it's God's will, and that the people that need to be there, that kind of a thing. And so, that's what I would more or less bring to the table, the adhering to God's will, like being able to adjust myself to that situation and being able to make it about that, right? That there's some sort of bigger divine purpose here. And so, that, whatever. And that this is, some of that can come through this YouTube channel, and maybe some of it comes from just life in general, like the people, we have neighbors there already who aren't, necessarily share my wife's and I beliefs on everything. Or, but are good neighbors or whatever. And so there's like things like that. But anyways, let me just wrap this one up here, and I'll, talk about this more as it unfolds. I'll get to all the emails and things that people are sending me, because it's, like I said, it's a changing situation. And so, as things unfold, we'll see. Okay, so just one more thing here. We got some bad news this morning that would have probably, if I had waited another day, I wouldn't have released the video. I did. I'm getting a number of people emailing me, and some of them sound like they would be a good fit. I think a number of people would possibly be a good fit. But my wife and I got some news that, and I don't think it's a mistake that I released the video, but, I just, whenever we do some traveling, there's always like an overwhelm of things that need to be done around the farm, and then other things, right? And then, so there's just, and then I have the different time periods where there's just adjustments. And as you get older, it's harder to do that. So, and I'm kind of overwhelmed by the social thing and having to respond to people. And, I mean, if somebody's not a good fit, or they don't, whatever it is. And, it's a weird thing, because back when I was a preceptor, people would come into my house and I give sittings. And, everybody had, I mean, I didn't have a cell phone, but, people had my phone number. And, this stuff where I have kept private for various reasons because of the YouTube channel, and I can talk about that more in detail, but it's just, there's been some issues in the past where people are more not respecting boundaries. Let's just put it that way. So, I have to hesitate with all those things. And then, and then I'm just so kind of stressed out. We just got some what would be considered bad news or worse news than we thought, in terms of, having to make this situation that's that's worse than we thought in terms of this house thing. But anyways, I still think that this is an idea that has to be there, and it, I don't think it's happening by accident. I know it isn't, so that's, there. And I'm gonna, try to, adjust myself the best I can to the whole thing. So, as time goes on, I'll be posting videos about this, and I'll contact people. Maybe I should, I'll go back and star all the emails of the people that seem to be a good fit, and then, follow-up conversations and things like this. Good ways also for people to contact me is through Facebook and things, in terms of whatever. and Instagram. Like that's the ones I see. The email is like a little bit, not as good for various reasons. But anyways, but certainly about this thing, the emails are good because it stands out away from the many Facebook messages. I don't get that many emails, so I'll be able to find these things, in future, people who are interested. And so specifically about this, it's good that people email me. About other things, not so much. Anyways, so I just want to add that, like, it's, where I'm getting kind of overwhelming news, and then all these people are contacting me, and then I'm trying to get a video done, and there's a big thing because the Trumpers are turning on Trump, so that's a big moment, for me. And so, anyways, let me finish this one up here, but I'll do some follow-up videos as this progresses. Okay, so one more voiceover here for this one. I've said and be grateful about 5 times, so I'm going to have to, go back and erase those things. And so we've had some developments happen today about the situation that I was talking about. I've already alluded to that already. And so I've had, numerous people reach out about it, and, there's places available around our farm. So, I just have to do some kind of figuring out how to start connecting with people. It'd be good if people made friends with me on Facebook, and then we could, have some sort of, I don't have, I don't know what it is. I can eventually get that, Zoom or what's any number of these apps that are available to talk about things. It'd be good to get a sense of people. I don't want some sort of a nightmare situation, which is obvious. If people were going to be moving there and then we, didn't get along or whatever, people have issues or whatever it might be. And so, that's the, process that I have to start looking into now. I guess it's happening now. So I'll, over the next week or so, I'll revisit all this stuff and, talk to my wife about it and figure out what to do in terms of connecting with people. If there's a good app out there that, again, be nice to. I mean, if people have social media, then they should contact me on social media as well. Make friends with me on Facebook or whatever. Instagram. So, we have to pre-screen things for obvious reasons because they're obvious, why we would have to do that. And so people can reach out through social media as well. And then, I'll figure out what to do in terms of connecting with people when I have time for it. It'll probably be at least next week, and we'll know more about various other things. And everything's still for one situation in particular, everything is sort of now up in the air a little bit, not as clear as it was before. And we had gotten information from some of our neighbors about people in their family that own property around there, and so they saw that. And hopefully we can develop some sort of, understanding of the interest out there and the compatibility, the shared goals that people would have and these things. And then we'll just go from there. So, like I said, things are always changing. I'm glad that I finally got around to this. I've always been somewhat apprehensive about this, but, there's always this idea that this was, going to develop. And like I said, what happened when we went to India, that my family was doomed. My family was doomed from the get-go. I didn't understand this. And, my kids were already, not buying into the whole thing. And then, my ex and her issues. And, I was limited, whatever, all of us. And it wasn't something that we could have moved forward with and then involved other people. Wouldn't have made it any better, in terms of a community. So, and community wasn't available. I mean, there's just a lot of, I don't want to call them sheeple, but people who are not, even with all the teachings and prophecies and things that are in the Sahaj Marg system, the people just aren't into it. People in India, there's some people that we met there, but, it's not, we weren't, moving and living in India and it wasn't a realistic possibility. It takes 13 years to get citizenship there, and it just isn't really worth it. So, back then, that first try, and there was just nothing there. There was no opportunity, but there was a possibility for that at one time. And we got a yes or no answer. Chris Kamlesh Patel and the whole thing with heartfulness, all the rest of those things. That just was, a mess. So there was just, information we didn't have. And, it's also what's going to happen. And the world is obviously changing, but to what extent and, how long will the economy stay? There's a lot of unanswered questions there. But people can always get prepared earlier and, and just it's people who want to live this way anyway, right? People who want to live in a rural area, people who want to return to farming and just growing your own food. You control your food in terms of, whatever is going into your food, whether it's animals or plant life. You can make sure that it's organic or chemical free and enhance it with whatever you want to enhance it with it in terms of, what you fertilize your food with, and then the minerals and the things that are put into your plants and your meat and your these types of things, your dairy products, all that kind of stuff, is people are aware of putting better stuff into their bodies and just the health that you get from being outside and doing work and getting vitamin D and all these things from the sun and all the rest of it. So, there's those people who are interested in this, and, it's also good for people to try it, because it's not for everybody and it's an adjustment. So those are all the factors, but like I said, again, today's Tuesday, July 15th. I won't put this up till, I'll put it up tomorrow on Gratefullness Meditation channel. And then sometime after that, I'll find a way to squeeze it in. It's tough for me to put 2 videos in one day, but I'll put it up on the other channels. And then after that, I will email people. I'll put all those emails into a fully. I have a way to star those emails, and so that I can keep them, away from, some way I can find them later on. And then, hopefully I can connect with people in some way, and then kind of figure it out from there. All right, so that's what we have so far. Okay, so this is Wednesday, July 16th. I actually completed this second video about potential pockets of the future Gratefulness meditation community, or maybe neighborhood would be a better way to put it. And I made a playlist on Gratefulness meditation, and I'll make a playlist on pockets of the future. Let me go do that right now. Like, first I want to say, very seldom do I put this video already up on Gratefulness meditation. It wasn't public. And I, I had this to add to it, so I decided to take it down. I already included it in my 2004 Journey series, so this part of this is going to be in a separate Journey series of 2005. It'll be the third audio. I've already made 2 audios for that. So, not 205. If it's 2005, I'll be 90, so if I'm still making Journey series when I'm over in my 90s, if I make it to 90s. But anyways, let me go do that as a playlist. Okay, so, I made a playlist. So there's some comments here. There's one comment specifically. Let me just sort of get focused here. I'm kind of just... in this comment here, a person writes, I really dislike these kind of comments. I would just be careful, Paul, with this because you may be... I would just be careful, Paul, with this because you may be getting more of a problem than a positive outcome. Lots of nut jobs out there, always drama from others. If you want to do this, I'd post on Homestaying Group or Facebook or something rather than getting someone from your followers. Really bad advice. I don't need advice. What person would believe that I wouldn't? I mean, I'm not a people person. This is me totally going out of my comfort zone to open up this possibility. And, only because I believe that I'm being directed by God. And so this isn't something where there's going to be scrutiny. My wife and my wife has to sign off on it, talking to people that are going to cause drama. I mean, as best as I can determine that, right? Again, not having, if you have just actual issues and, people go through cleaning in the Sahaj Marg system, but people who are just, have some sort of personality disorder and have no ability to contribute in these things. That is not a possibility. I just can't have it. When and if I have spiritual gatherings, there's going to be things that people are going to have to sign waivers and things. I'm just, there's been issues in the past, and it's sad that that's the case, but that's the case, right? There's going to have to be some various things because I'm not, it's to me a privilege to be able to do gratefulness meditation, and I'm taking a lot of responsibility on and doing a lot of the work and effort and providing an opportunity for people, and there's going to have to be some level of understanding about that. And so whenever those things happen, that's part of the reason I have delayed on those things, because I need people to step up and volunteer and be part of it, as well as all these other things. I'm not going to risk our future and just years of drama and shit like that getting involved with people who are whatever. So I mean, I'm obviously that person. I'm not looking for friends, and I'm not looking to expand my social life. This is me feeling that God has opened up these possibilities, and so that's the first piece. That's and so the other piece is it has to come through my channel and the gratefulness meditation, because a big part of it, I believe, for me, is to do with gratefulness meditation. It's everything to do with that. Homesteading, sure, that's a part of it, and what people need to do to come together as a neighborhood, as a community, that's all going to be part of that too. But without it having anything to do with the gratefulness meditation system, Sahaj Marg system of meditation and transmission and cleaning, that's the only thing worth spreading. I mean, it's I'm not like the best homesteader and all these other things. Like if that's that would be the only reason I would venture to do something like this, to make it possible for people to come together. In the way it used to be, when I was a preceptor, people would have my number, random strangers would have my number, they'd come over and get sittings. You go over to a preceptor's house, you get sittings, people would show up at gatherings. There was mostly no issues, but things have changed dramatically, and all the shit that's gone down with Dodgy and all that kind of shit. And so there's going to have to be some things that has to be a level of protection, a level of, just being smart and realizing the world that we live in. But eventually, hopefully there'll be people who can benefit from the system, have a connection to the system, have the desire to live in the country and homestead, and have skills and things to offer a community. And if there isn't that, there isn't that. I'm fine with it not being that way. It's my duty to move forward with this, because I believe that there's things happening, opening up as a possibility. I've had these things open up before and close down. There's things like that. But there's a belief system that I have and my wife shares in terms of the truther stuff and these things and the homesteading. And some of you guys share that, and there's some sort of connection here between me and you in some ways that I'm not aware of. So this is the best way. It's stupid for me to go on some random Facebook page with homesteading, because that's not what this thing's about. It's partly about that, but it's not. I'm looking for homesteaders. That's silly. It's still random people. It still have to go through some just stupid stuff people say. The intention's there. The people that are supposed to be there will be there. The people that aren't won't. And then, there'll be some process of human, whatever it is, interactions and scrutiny. And, just if there's, property that we own and, people are, on that property to some extent, there'll be, we'll have some, powers of getting rid of people who are misbehaving or whatever. It's just, that'll have to be part of it, right? Because I wouldn't do it any other way, because I've seen what kind of shit that you have to endure with people, people just having issues or being deceptive or just broken people. But this isn't for broken people. I'm not looking to do service or charity. I'm not looking to carry people. This is something where I just want to, help people in some material fashion. Just, obeying the will of God. If this is something that God wants to happen, it'll happen. The divine hierarchy in the Sahaj Marg system. If it isn't, it isn't. And there's been things that opened up the Gratefulness Meditation YouTube channel. That's been going well, and there's been, indications of, there's been progress and growth in that. And eventually there could be gatherings and things, and then, so many of us experience going to these gatherings. Sometimes we didn't have the money to travel, some of us or whatever, or were busy or couldn't get the time off at work, or there'd be some reason why you couldn't make it to the gathering, and things would just open up and you would just go there. Some things would happen and would just, I wouldn't say magically, but things would just sort of work out because it was supposed to happen for you. And then you'd go and have this amazing time, and it would be transformational, and just other things, going to India and other types of things like that were imperative that you go through, and they were spiritual benefit, and it was just part of some sort of destiny, as well as your own spiritual will to move along your spiritual path. And that's the reason that this thing will happen or not happen, right? And so and that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm not, I have mixed feelings about it personally, but I'm not going to block it or force it, based on any personal preference. It's, if it works out, it works out. I'll do my part to make it work out, but that's all I'll do. I'm not going to over extend myself to make something work that's not supposed to work out, right? But like, it's silly. Let me just go back to this person's comment. I would be careful, Paul, with this. You may be getting more of a problem than positive outcome. Lots of nut jobs out there, always drama for others. Like, you don't think I'm aware of that shit after, working as a counselor and my life with my ex and seeing all the bullshit that goes on in the world. You don't think I know what humanity's like, and like, fucking. You don't think I'm not? I'm not wary of human beings. And the people that come here, they're going to have to, like, rise up to a higher level. That's what's going to have to happen. Like, people are going to have to become better because that's what's needed. It's just the way it is. It's like something where, it's a test that people have to, it's not like, this is some kind of cult-like organization that's just trying to bring in people just to have numbers in and take resources from people. It's the opposite of that thing. It has to be that there's people of quality that want to participate in something that is, mutually beneficial and build a community, and knowing that there's going to have to be some personal sacrifices and selflessness for people to do that, right? You have to be selfless, and you have to, extend yourself, and, like, it's already stuff that I'm doing that I wouldn't normally do, but I believe that this is something that God wants me to do, and I won't ignore what I think are God's orders. At least I have to make the opportunity available. But maybe there'll be no one to participate, and that'll be that, right? And so, like I said, there's already been a little bit of a setback or a delay in some of it. Things are already, there's always material issues, and there needs to be some repairs done to the property and things that, we didn't anticipate. So, like, there's things that we're going to have to deal with. But anyways, so that's the whole thing. There's just, a handful of people that have expressed interest right now. And so, as time goes on, and if, there is people there, and, we can pull together some sort of gathering for one of the master's birthdays over time, things like this, then, we'll see what happens with all that. And people might be drawn to the situation, and then you can meet people, and, people can experience the thing, see if it's something that they're interested in. It'll be a better type of situation. But anyways, that's it in about a nutshell. Like, there's going to be a system my wife and I have to develop to, evaluate the fit, and, everyone can be nice in a conversation, so there has to be some sense of it. And also, people are, married, and they have kids, and they have, whatever they have. And so it's kind of a thing that really it has to be something for them to determine at some level, and for God to determine. And there has to be some some kalpa, a will that's set around us, that the people that aren't meant to be, that just, it won't happen. The people who are meant to be a part of it, they won't, it won't work out for them, because it just won't. And I've seen this happen before. Like, things just fall off, other things come up in their lives, they just, it just doesn't work out. So, there'll be some, this is like some divine, the divinity will be a big part of the deciding, the essence that decides what happens with this thing or not. And so, like I said, like, I have mixed feelings. I've been a little bit excited about the possibility, but I know it's going to be extra work and, more sacrifice on my part and whatever. And then, you know, if it doesn't happen, I'm also happy, right? So, you know, I like, it's not like I'm personally invested in this thing one way or another. You know, I'm a little bit apprehensive, if anything, just because of, you know, all of it. And so, you know, the apprehension is, I mean, there's already some of that, and just, I would say negativity towards it, but, you know, a little bit of skepticism just because, right? So, anyways, that's, you know, that's where I'm coming from. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important to the Apocalaughs and the Ascension. I want to have a blessed day and be grateful.